for goodness sakes, will you light somewhere?
I can't help it. I'm nervous.
About what?
About what? Miriam's in there fighting for a kid, and her father isn't going to be throwing any bouquets at her from the witness stand either.
Don't you worry about a thing. Mr. Webster gonna see that the truth gets told.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm worried about, too.
Mr. Carpenter, would you please tell the court what your relationship is to Eric Carpenter Mason?
I am Eric's grandfather.
Is he your only grandchild?
Yes, he is.
Do you love him, Mr. Carpenter?
Very, very much.
And in your opinion, does your daughter love the boy as much as you do?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel has stated himself he's asking for an opinion.
Sustained.
I'll rephrase the question, Your Honor. Mr. Carpenter, why are you seeking custody of your grandson?
Because my daughter has demonstrated that she's not capable of bringing up a child. And her neglect of pets was often quite cruel, so ultimately we just had to stop giving her any animals.
Your Honor, must we be subjected to this? We're dealing with Miriam Mason here as an adult. I think any information on her before she was a mother is irrelevant.
With all respect, Your Honor, what I'm trying to establish here are lifelong behavioral patterns. They have a great deal to do with this case.
Overruled.
Now, Mr. Carpenter, I think I know what my opponent is hinting at. Except for the expense of the items involved, what you've described could seem to be the actions of a typical child.
Possibly. But in truth, Miriam never accepted responsibility for her actions. It was always a friend who had broken something. It was always the caretaker's child who hurt the animal. And no amount of pleading or reasoning could ever convince her that she'd done anything wrong.
But, of course, this got better as she got older.
No, I'm afraid it didn't. After the broken toys and all the other episodes, she would frequently indulge in flagrant overspending or defiance of authority. I can't tell you how many private schools she was asked to leave. The realities of everyday living were totally lost on Miriam. I made other arrangements.
The realities of everyday living? It's a very general statement.
Your Honor,
designed
I
to do
believe that
great
my
harm
client
to my
was about
clients,
to
Your Honor.
elaborate before he
Gentlemen, objection sustained. Mr. Carpenter, please make your comments specific and supportable.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Carpenter, when was your daughter married?
She married Paul Mason in 1971.
And at the time of this marriage, what was Mr. Mason's annual salary?
$20,000.
Only $5,000 more than Miriam once spent in a month. Well, she must have loved Mr. Mason a great deal to make such a sacrifice.
Well, she once confided in me that she never loved him.
Never loved him? Well, why did she marry him?
Because I specifically asked her not to.
That isn't true.
Objection, Your Honor. That's pure speculation.
Order. Mrs. Mason, you will refrain from any further outbursts. And Mr. Carpenter, you will stick to the facts that are supportable as I've already directed you. Mr. Meyer's question and Mr. Carpenter's response will be stricken from the record. Proceed.
Mr. Carpenter, your daughter was divorced in 1981, and Mr. Mason, her ex-husband, was awarded custody of your grandson.
That's right.
Now, why was that?
She was declared an unfit mother.
Yes, Your Honor, I submit to the court the decision of the Honorable William F. Hancock to this effect, dated August 21, 1981. I will return to that later. Mr. Carpenter, will you please now tell the court about the events that occurred in your household between the time that Judge Hancock's decision was handed down and April of 1982?
Well, Miriam's behavior, to say the least, was very irrational. At that time, I had suffered some heavy business losses and was forced into making some rather severe cutbacks.
And did these cutbacks include Miriam's monthly allowance?
Yes, I'm afraid they did, and she certainly protested bitterly about it. Unfortunately, times were difficult, and I even suggested that she get a job.
And what was her response to that suggestion?
She laughed at me. It was then that she started drinking rather heavily. Mr. Webster over there could certainly confirm that on more than one occasion she burst into my office quite drunk. Then she went from alcohol to drugs, and in April of '82 was admitted to Kingsley General Hospital.
For
Substance abuse. She became addicted to barbiturates.
anything else?
Yes. She was diagnosed as an acute schizophrenic.
But her treatment proceeded smoothly and she was released in due time.
No, I'm afraid not. While she was at the hospital, she attempted suicide with an overdose of drugs.
Your Honor, I further submit Miriam Mason's medical records, which will substantiate everything that Mr. Carpenter has just told us. And again, I will return to those later. So, Miriam received extensive psychiatric treatment, after which time she was released. And she subsequently exhibited none of the behaviors she had shown before she was hospitalized.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is consistently leading the witness here.
Sustained.
Mr. Carpenter, where does your daughter live now?
In a ghetto.
Objection. That's an arbitrary and prejudicial statement.
Sustained.
Mr. Carpenter, just the address will do fine.
76 Lincoln Avenue in the Chesterfield section.
Has she ever given you any reason why she chooses to live there?
Well, she claims that the atmosphere is more healthy than it is in my household.
And you live where?
In the Larchmont section of Kingsley.
That's quite an exclusive neighborhood.
Objection, Your Honor. Exclusive is just as arbitrary and prejudicial as ghetto.
Sustained.
Mr. Carpenter, your grandson Eric lived with you for a short time, didn't he?
Yes, and then his mother, claiming apparently that my wealth was at fault here, took him into what statistically is known as the most crime-ridden area in the city.
Mr. Carpenter, why does your daughter consider your wealth to be harmful?
I don't know. Certainly, I've given the boy everything I possibly can. I don't know what else to do.
Objection. Mr. Carpenter has clearly stated that he doesn't know. Any further remarks would be considered conjecture, I should think.
Overruled. Considering Mrs. Mason's drastic change in attitude toward wealth, I think his opinion as someone close to her is important. Answer the question, Mr. Carpenter.
Well, Your Honor, it's a sign of her instability, the fact that, an indication, if you will, that she's simply not well yet. Not too long ago, Your Honor, she was kidnapped and held for ransom. Certainly you must know that I had great feelings and sensitivity about her sufferings. But when she was released, she refused to see a psychiatrist. I wanted her to because she kept insisting that her deprivation had a positive aspect to it, that it actually helped her. And my great fear is that she is trying to recreate the same experience for my grandson. And I find that excessively cruel and totally irresponsible.
Your witness, counselor?
You know, Lester wants to keep this whole thing as quiet as he can. So I told him very plainly, if he takes any action against me, I won't be quiet. Now look, and don't worry about Nancy either. Look, Ben did a brilliant job on her. She's gonna be just fine.
Yeah. I just hope that Ben won't lose his license.
Well, not if every doctor in this town has anything to say about it.
Oh, if only Dave would have been at the clinic that night. I mean, Nancy would have been able to talk to him and none of this would have happened.
Terry, you can drive yourself crazy with the what-ifs. How's Dave? Been seeing much of him lately?
Not as much as I'd like to. Well, what I mean is, we just barely manage to wave hello to each other as I pass through the clinic or he passes through the hospital. I've never really had the chance to thank him for all he's doing to help Ben. You know, he's really helped to hold that clinic together.
No. Well, I think you might have a chance right now.
Hi. May I join you?
Mr. Carpenter, I wonder if you could please state your age for the court?
What does my age have to do with what's going on here?
Your Honor?
Answer the question, Mr. Carpenter.
62.
Are you ashamed of how old you are?
Certainly not.
Well, I just asked because you seemed reluctant to give it. Now, Mr. Carpenter, I wonder if you could now please tell us where you were on November 15th, 1982. Mr. Carpenter, Your Honor, if this continues, I'm going to have to insist.
I was in Kingsley General Hospital. It took me a moment to remember.
Mm-hmm, I bet it did. Could you tell us, please, why you were hospitalized?
I had an operation.
Like what kind of operation?
Heart surgery.
That's exactly right. A triple coronary artery bypass, in fact. How long are you in the operating room?
I didn't ask.
Well, for your information, I'll be happy to let you know you were in there for 6 hours. Were you told that you had to have this operation?
It was deemed advisable.
Advisable, or else what? Or else you die, isn't that right?
Mr. Webster, we all face that possibility.
Uh-huh. Only some of us face it a little more eminently than others do. Are you still under a doctor's care for your heart?
Yes.
Take medication?
Yes.
Every single day?
Yes.
Some of this medication for pain?
Answer the question, Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, some of it is, but I...
Now, that's enough answer for me, thank you. Now, you have gone to great pains to let us know about Miriam Mason's psychological instability, emotional instability, if you will. Which do you think is worse? Emotional instability or physical instability?
Objection, Your Honor. He's asking my client to draw a conclusion in an area
drop the question, Your Honor. As to Miriam Mason's emotional stability, in June of last year, Mr. Carpenter filed a petition to have her declared mentally incompetent for the purpose of having her institutionalized. Your colleague, Your Honor, Judge Bethany Slaymaker, denied that petition, and she ruled that Miriam was, in fact, exceedingly competent. As to the charge that she was psychologically impaired by her kidnapping experience, I will deal with that later when Miriam is on stand. Mr. Carpenter, do you think that you could provide a healthier atmosphere for Eric to be raised in than Miriam could?
I most certainly do.
And would you include in that healthier atmosphere telling Eric that you were a silent partner of one Vince Cardello, one of the most important crime figures on the East Coast?
Objection,
a
Your
partnership
Honor.
which was dissolved only by Mr. Cardello's death.
Objection, Your Honor. My client's association with Mr. Cardello was through Hollister Mall, a completely legitimate enterprise. Mr. Cardello's role in that was as an investor, much as a person might invest in a stock company. To disparage the builder of Hollister Mall, which all of our city officials have hailed as a great civic enterprise because of the investment of Mr. Cardello in it, is simply an attempt to apply guilt by association against my client.
Overruled. What's at issue here is who is best suited to raise a young boy. Now, personal and business associations are very important.
Exception, Your Honor.
Noted. Were you Vince Cardello's business partner, Mr. Carpenter?
Yes, I was.
Well, were you aware of his ties to organized crime?
No, I was certainly not aware of that.
Had you heard any rumors about his underworld activities?
Rumors, Mr. Webster, are just as invalid in business as they are in the law.
In this healthier atmosphere we were speaking about, would you also tell Eric why it is that his grandmother will no longer speak to you?
We got a divorce, that's reason enough.
What were the grounds for divorce when Miss Carpenter filed?
Incompatibility.
Isn't it true that she, in fact, left you because you swindled her out of $500,000?
Objection, Your Honor. My opponent had better be prepared to substantiate that charge.
Yes, Your Honor, I am prepared. I have detailed records of how every single penny was transferred from Helen Carpenter's trust fund by Mr. Carpenter to Mr. Carpenter.
You also have a copy of a document giving me that power. I never forced her, Your Honor,
Excuse
at
me,
all.
Your Honor, but the petitioner is speaking out of turn.
Nevertheless, I'm interested in what he has to say. Mr. Carpenter?
My wife, Helen, gave me that power of attorney. I invested her money, all of it. Later on second thought, she might have been a little unhappy about this. But as to the accusation of theft, I believe that arises out of the ignorance of a foolish old woman who doesn't understand business.
A foolish old woman? Oh, my. Your Honor, this is how Mr. Carpenter refers to Eric's beloved grandmother. Oh, yes, I can see in every single thing he says and does. Mr. Carpenter is going to be a fine example to a little 11-year-old boy.
you're a doctor, huh? You're a psychiatrist, I'll bet. I can always tell.
And you, madam, are a nuisance. They're easy to pick out, too.
Oh, yeah? Well, when you get in there, you better not be giving Miriam a bum rap. Just make sure you tell the truth.
Truth is my stock in trade.
Truth is my stock in trade. Sheesh.
Oh, look, I'd really like to stay here and listen to some more war stories, but Mr. Corpsley is waiting for me. Cropsley is waiting for me up on the second floor. So I'll catch up with you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Alex.
I'm glad I found you. Do you mind if I bend your ears for a few minutes?
Well, not at all. What's wrong?
Amber's pregnant.
Gil Prescott's the father?
Yeah.
Well, it certainly doesn't make things very easy for Stacy, does it?
Unfortunately, that's the least of it. She wants to abort. And I'm afraid I've upset everybody with my feelings about that.
Even Kate?
Especially Kate. It's created a huge gulf between us.
She doesn't understand how much you're opposed to abortion.
She does now. Oh, I can't blame her, I guess. She remembers the way I used to be. And Amber? She's enraged that I would even venture an opinion. Stacy's upset and angry because, well, I've suggested that Gil and Amber should get married.
Do they love each other?
Amber says no, but she's really emotional about this right now. She's angry with everybody and everything. And, I don't know, Terry, I think she should give herself a chance and the kid and Gil. I think she should really look into her heart about this thing.
Yes, but what if her heart tells her no?
Well, then I don't know. It's just that, well, Terry, she can't abort.
No, but she can carry the child full term and give it up for adoption. Look, Dave, I know this is your grandchild, and I know that this is a very emotional thing for you. But please don't encourage what, in all probability, would be a loveless marriage. Now, from what you've told me of Amber, if anything, that would just push her to terminate the pregnancy. Dave, it is a possibility. All I'm saying is that Amber might rebel against your advice. She doesn't care about this child. All she's thinking about is herself.
But what if I can convince Gil to marry her?
So, Dr. Feldman, it was on your recommendation that Charles Carpenter sought to have his daughter declared incompetent.
I don't know whether it was on my recommendation, but it was my opinion that she needed further care.
Thank you, Dr. Feldman.
Mr. Webster?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Feldman, in effect, Judge Slaymaker ruled that, well, you were wrong about Miriam Mason. I wonder how you feel about that.
Objection, Your Honor. Dr. Feldman's personal feelings about that ruling are not the issue here.
Sustained.
I'll just rephrase the question then. Does it happen often that a court will decide it knows more about a medical issue than you do?
Up until now, that was the only court case I've been involved in.
I see. Well, the other psychiatrist, the one who decided that Miriam Mason was ready to be released, the one who was correct?
With all due respect, Your Honor, the other doctor was correct, only in Judge Slaymaker's opinion. If you support Mr. Carpenter's claims and award him custody of his grandson, you will be, in effect, throwing doubt over that previous decision.
Mr. Myers, if custody is taken away from Mrs. Mason, it won't necessarily be for psychiatric reasons. Now, until I can further investigate this, Judge Slaymaker's decision as to the competency of Mrs. Mason stands.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's just exactly the point I was trying to make. I have no more questions.
Mr. Myers, do you wish to redirect?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. Dr. Feldman, the last time that you saw Miriam Mason professionally was when?
Just before the hearing last June.
Uh-huh, well, A lot has certainly happened to her since then. Based on your experience with her and taking into account the kind of behavior she's exhibited, would you say that her personality profile would be conducive to good parenting?
Oh, no, I gotta object to that, Your Honor. There's no way in the world Dr. Feldman can make that kind of a judgment based on what he knows. His information is purely secondhand since Ms. Mason was declared mentally competent.
Your objection is a valid one, Mr. Webster. However, Dr. Feldman is well acquainted with the respondent, and it really isn't second-hand knowledge he's received. It's testimony, given under oath. I am interested in his professional opinion. The court instructs you, however, Dr. Feldman, to give guarded answers. Mr. Webster, it will be weighted accordingly.
Exception, Your Honor.
Noted. Dr. Feldman?
Based on my knowledge of Mrs. Mason last June, my answer would be no. At that time, she wasn't ready to assume the role of parent or guardian.
Well, it's still worth a try. I'm gonna go to Gil and try to find out what that boy's feeling about all this.
Good idea. But Dave, please remember, you're dealing with two young adults who share very different values than you.
Yeah, that's true, but still it's worth a try. Well, I hope I didn't take up all your time.
Oh, no, not at all. Oh, Alice, don't run away. I've got a question to ask you later, okay? Sure.
Yeah, you better get back to work. And, well, thanks for listening. And for the suggestion. It's an option that might help those two decide, well, what to do with the baby. Thanks, Terry. You're a good friend.